Okay, the meet. Approve the minutes of December 28th. Do you have any questions about the minutes? Anybody? Okay, approved as looked at, I guess. We didn't read them, so okay. On number 3.01, I'd like to move that down to the bottom of the meeting and have a short closed session on that. And we've had a committee working on that, the question, so we'll have a closed session on that. Recap of the candidate training orientation. We had some good talks there. The committee did a really good job. Luann did a lot of the training through the process. The people there were willing to discuss things, and I think we had a very good meeting. We heard good things about that session. Any questions at all from the people that weren't there on the orientation? It was a 2-hour deal, 10 to 12, and I think it went well. You got anything to say about that?
I thought it went well, and there was a lot of feedback from questions asked by the candidates. So at least they were listening.
Yeah. Anything?
No.
Okay. The pat on the back to Martin and Katie and the photography club for the videos. I got really some good feedback on people really liked those, and the photography club, I'll go over and thank them for that, and you guys did a great job. Resumes look good. Got that taken care of. So it's on the website. They're all on the website, so it's easy to get to. Karen, could you give us a real quick synopsis on what board members are not going to be there, are running again, and who is running again?
We have 5 candidates running, and I just moved that aside. You're asking for who is running, who the 5 are. Am I
No,
correct?
I'm asking what the board members that aren't, whose places they're taking.
Oh, the president, Sue Fitzsimons, will be stepping off the board. This is her last year of her 3-year term. And there were 2 appointees this year, Jim Sloan and Tim Hurley. So their 1-year appointments are ending with this fiscal, in other words, June 30th. However, Tim Hurley is one of the 5 candidates running again for one of the 4 open positions on the board.
Okay. We had 7 people running at the time of orientation, and now we've had a couple of them drop out, so we have a total of 5. Katie, could you give us? We'd just like an overview of what really happens on this online voting and so on. What kind of company what kind of a vendor do we use? How does that work?
Sure, it's a company called Vote Now. He's based in Florida. He's been doing it for years and years. He's been great. He's got a lot of big clients as well. So what happens is we have a deadline. I'm sorry I don't have those dates in front of me, but a deadline where you register. And technically registering, all that is ensuring that you have your email address on file with us if you want to vote early. And so we need to have an email ballot. So once that cutoff date for having an email address on file passes, we take that extraction from our database. We go through and make sure we have all our owner members and investors, and then we make sure that they are in good standing. And we take the ones that have an email address on file with us, and we send that to this vendor. And that vendor takes it and sends an early ballot, an invitation to vote by mail to all of those folks once the early voting process starts. In the past, we tried to send it to folks early, saying, okay, get ready, like tomorrow at 8 a.m. it'll start, but they tried to vote right away and they thought something was broken. So we don't send those ballots until the balloting has actually opened. And then if they haven't voted a couple days later, he'll send them a reminder ballot saying, okay, it's time to vote. Make sure you vote. Here's the deadline. And usually he'll send a second reminder before early voting closes. Once early voting closes, he will send me a list of all it is. It's not how anyone voted. It's just a list of owner member numbers and whether they voted or did not vote. I do not get how they voted. Then I take that list of who has voted. I send that to our membership to the Data Resource Center to vote. We have our election volunteers who can tell if somebody has already cast a ballot or not. If they have already cast a ballot, obviously they cannot vote again. If they contest that, we would take it to a judge who is somebody from the committee. We can talk through that process if we want, but basically we have a process to check that someone doesn't vote twice. If they have not voted already, we have a little code we would give them so they can go to a computer in the Data Resource Center and cast an electronic ballot there as well. And you guys on the election committee would assist them if they are not comfortable using a computer, but the whole process is electronic. And within 20 minutes of the polls closing, we have the results from the vendor. I give those usually to Marshall, who announces those, or I'm not sure if he gives them to the president. I think
President of the board.
President of the board, yeah. So that's it in a nutshell, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
How can people make sure their numbers are available for early voting? In other words, you say that they have to check to make sure that you have their numbers. How do they go about doing that?
Okay, so first of all, owner members may vote. Associates may not, and tenants may not. Investors are owner members. Investors may vote. And investors will have their votes weighted. So if they own more than one property, say they own 2, their votes will count twice. If they own 3, their votes will count 3 times. So making sure we have their information means we have to have a valid email address on file for them in our membership database. That is not the same thing as receiving the e-news. So just because you get the e-news does not mean that our membership database has an email address on file for you. If you voted in a past election and your email address is not changed, then you're fine. If you've recently changed your email address, or you're not sure, or you want to use a different email address, simply send an email to vote@suncitywest.com. That's all spelled out. And we would need to receive that by 3 p.m. Wednesday, March 16th. And then we'll simply input that. It's an autoresponder on that email address. So if you get the autoresponder, you're good. You're not going to necessarily get a personal response unless there's a problem with that. We need your name, your rec card number, and then we'll have that email address and we'll update your information. And then when the online balloting opens, we'll send you your ballot to that email address on file and cast your ballot before those online polls close, and you'll be good. Yes, Max?
Yeah, just a quick question. That website to go on to verify that my email is correct is vote@suncitywest.com.
Yeah, it's not a website. It's an email address.
Sorry.
Yeah, so, yeah, we've had that in the past. Just send an email to vote@suncitywest.com, include your name, your rec card number, and the email address that you want us to put on file for you.
Okay.
And if you
And then how do we verify that that was actually put in? Will we get a reply back that was updated or no?
you will get an autoresponder from that email address, and all of those are checked. And so you don't need to do anything further.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Katie? So I'm still interested in this vendor. Are there a lot of vendors like that? Or just, this is all this company does?
This is all that this
do
company
this stuff
does.
all over the country?
Yeah, he's all over the country. He's got more and more Arizona clients. He's from Florida, so he dealt with a lot of senior communities. Ever since COVID, there's more and more of these cropping up. You're seeing more and more, but originally there were not very many of them. And I've had referrals from like Sun City Grand, Sun City, I think Trilogy. Several people have called and asked who we were using because they heard really good things about what we were doing here. They were interested in increasing their own voter turnout because we've like tripled our average turnout since we've gone to online voting. State law and our own bylaws require that we do have in-person voting, so we have accommodated that with the voting day in the Data Resource Center, and our vendor has been able to tweak his process to allow that. He does have several clients. Some of them are like sororities and those type of things where they exclusively do online voting. When we explained our process and the state law, he worked with us, and it's worked out great to have that in-person voting day. So he can tweak the software for whatever client that he has, and he's got hundreds from HOAs, small HOAs, bigger ones like us, to sororities and social service groups. So,
Okay, thank you.
all right.
Okay, the review, the voting day, on-site, in-person voting, we will report to the on-site the day of the voting to be trained, to be sure we know what we're doing, to help people. And we'll need several people, like we'll need a person to check the 75-foot rule where people can't distribute materials within 75 feet. Those kinds of things. We need judges, and just people to help. We'll probably be there all day. At the end of that day, who does the committee want to make that announcement of the voting?
Yeah, Marshall, the results are announced by the current governing board president.
Okay, all right. So Sue will do that then.
Yes.
Okay.
Quick
Okay.
question on that day, voting hours? Just for my own information and anybody watching?
10 to 3. I believe it's 10 to 3. I can Katie mention.
10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Monday, March 28th.
At the library?
Yeah, and the main library is closed that day, so you want to park at that north entrance in the computer room.
It's called the Data Resource Center, the computer side.
Right. So 10 to 3, and sorry, the day?
28th. Okay. So we'll work out who we need and what we need and that kind of thing, and we'd like to.
I would suggest two IT people on site if that's possible. If it can go faster, I think that's one of the comments that was made, that if there's 2 IT people, it goes really smoothly, allows for breaks for both people, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, we'll start out with 2. The last election, the recall was heavy voting, a huge turnout, and normal ones are not that heavy. If we don't need the 2, we'll send one of them home. Do you want us to do then the ID verification and you guys do the voting process itself?
I think.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Okay, so then the training itself is, we could do on-the-job training with the first voters. In fact, if you guys don't vote early, we can do the training with your own voting. I mean, it's really not difficult. If you vote at home early, basically it's going to be the same thing. You're going to walk someone over to the computer, and that's going to be the process that they're going to do, so.
Okay.
Another question. With COVID still spiking, how do we, first of all, I would assume that people waiting are outside and people voting are inside. Do we have any method of cleaning the screens quickly so that we can do some kind of a quick scrub of the things everybody touches?
So when we more carefully plan the day, we'll include the ability to wipe down the screens and the keyboards. We have materials to do that. That will be handled by the committee.
Okay. Go ahead.
Katie, I have a question about the voting in person that day. Does everyone that is voting that day have to have a physical rec card?
So that'll be your decision. The software that we will use, we could pull up theoretically their rec card number by hand entering their number. If they know it, we'll have a photo in front of us. You know, if their photo's 20 years old and it doesn't look like them, that's where we would call on the judge. You guys should have a judge from amongst you to decide. In the past, we've said, yes, you have to have your physical rec card, but that's up to you guys.
Thank you.
I just asked Marcia what you
Yeah,
thought about that.
yeah, I think they ought to have a rec card.
I think rec card or still card.
Oh, for sure, Stow card would be fine too. That is our policy at all the rec centers as well.
Yeah, okay,
What card?
a rec card,
A rec card, or she said, or something?
Stow card.
the one that did. On your
Oh,
iPhone.
sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't
okay.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we could use the mini
If they would
ones.
forget it or not have it or get frustrated, you have an ability to look it up, so we could make exceptions for that for an aging community, couldn't we?
We could, yeah, and I would use the small little keychain card. I would follow the normal policy we use anywhere else.
Okay. Okay, any other questions on the day of the voting? Okay. I kind of would like to talk to you a little bit about the process and the procedure for the forum and the meet and greet. What I'd like to do, and you guys shoot me down if you don't want it this way, I'd like the three people that did the orientation to be responsible for the meet and greet, and the people that did the questions to be responsible for the forum. And you guys decide how you're gonna rotate people, who's gonna read questions, how you're gonna get the questions separated, and that's your responsibility on that day. Does that sound fair? Okay,
So to clarify, we would have, for March 2, that would be Leslie, Al, and Merle,
yeah.
and then March.
And we'll be there, we'd be there
16.
to support you telling us what to do. That's the only time, Les, that's gonna happen. Okay? Any concerns about that?
There were a few things that came out of the training that we'll need to include in the forums, such as it was decided that there would be no follow-on responses to questions, that we would send general topics to the candidates in advance, that laptops would not be allowed, and questions would not be directed to specific candidates. It'll be a random draw for questions. And this all came out in the forum. And Leslie, I've got a lot of stuff written down I can hand to you.
Okay,
One other thing, March 2, time for that?
that's one of those,
9 to 11, here in the lecture hall.
9 to 11, and it is here, okay?
That is correct.
And same meet and greet,
I believe it's 6:30 to 8. I gave my sheet away. Hang on a minute, I will tell you exactly. 6:30 to 8, I believe, at the social hall. These are in your instruction pages, social hall west and east, 6:30 to 8 p.m.
yeah, I knew it was there, but I thought for people
Yes.
listening, it'd be
To
handy
double
have
check,
that.
that
Yeah.
nothing's been changed.
But we had also said that the location for the first forum, the panel forum, could possibly change depending on COVID, that there may be.
if we could get the room.
Well, unless there's a broader change, we would have to there would have to be a social distancing seating arrangement here. You can see how that cuts down the number of live attendees drastically.
Yeah,
But
that's
if we-
why we
but if we-
talked about
if we were to
possibly
move it
moving
to-
it now, so that IT would know and they can set up, early and reserve the room.
Well, I
Can we
guess it would
s-
depend on if the social hall is open on that day.
Can somebody quickly check the availability of the social hall on, March 2nd in the morning?
I would have to go to scheduling after this meeting. Do you want me to go there now? While
No,
you're
we're not that-
meeting?
It's not that big a hurry.
Okay. So are you saying that you do want to go ahead and make that change, or you're questioning whether you're going to make it?
Because if you look at this setup here, it's great for,
100 people, rough.
100 is total
Rough and tough,
without spacing.
without spacing.
So knock that down to 70 roughly for a little bit of spacing.
Probably fewer, because you have to alternate not only across rows,
Yeah.
but front to back.
So 50.
Yeah, I would say it cuts down. Yeah.
In the past, have you had people attend those at 50
Absolutely.
or more?
In the past, but of course, it's been a little different in the last few years. But yes, people do appear in person.
I think we should err on the side of caution and move it if we can have the availability to do that. Set up a better spacing.
And our options may be the Social Hall or Palm Ridge, because they are both large venues.
Can we look into that?
I will. Because we should make if you want to make a decision on that, I'm not saying right now, but you want to do that quickly, because we have to do all the public relations and notifying the community adequately of the change in venue, should you decide to do it. For now, we'll be in the lecture hall on March 2.
And Katie, what is the deadline for the e-news or the
Yeah, so
newspaper?
E-News is weekly, so I wouldn't worry about that deadline, but the publicity did already go out in the rec news stating it was here. So let me just throw out an alternative. And last year's forum is still up on YouTube if you wanted to review it. You could keep it here and just go virtual and not have a crowd. So you could keep it here and just say, due to huge spike in COVID, we're not going to have an audience, but it will be live streamed, blah, blah, blah. And then you'll have the appearance that you did last year if you want to go out on YouTube and look at that one. This does have a nice filming view. It's easy for the guys to film here. Or if you moved it to the social hall, and you're spreading people out in this gigantic room 6 feet apart, it makes it a little awkward for the candidates maybe to speak to this big spread out room.
What
So-
if we did a kind of half and half deal where we said, we're going to do a virtual, but we will allow 50 attendees spaced?
Given that it'll be virtual.
And that's
Yeah,
kind of what they did last year. It was like everyone could invite 3 family or friends, I think is what they did, so.
And if it's virtual, of course, they can send questions in, that's not a problem.
That's what we did last year, yeah. Yeah. So that's an option. Then you're not changing venues. Then you don't have to worry about the publicity because it is already out there. Otherwise, the deadline would be the first Friday of February to squeeze it into March's Rec Center News. But you still have some old PR out there already.
So I don't know that this needs a motion, but I would suggest that we do keep it here. Perhaps limit attendance, in-person attendance, but make it virtual so that we've got that decision done and we can announce it. Is
Yeah, and
that all
just,
right?
keep in mind, people are pretty self-correcting with COVID. When they see the numbers spike, they tend to stay home, especially if they have the option of watching this at home. So if you just throw that out there that, hey, it's live stream, you can watch it, anytime, it'll be recorded and out there. You may get a few who show up, but most people will take that option anyway.
Another thing that we had discussed at a previous meeting is that we would allow people to send in questions in advance of the forum by email. Are we still going to do that? And if so, we need to come up with the email address and who will be handling receipt of those questions?
Why don't we let them give the questions when they come that night, rather than putting another level of stuff in it, you know? I mean, that's just another issue that we develop ourselves, that we.
Yeah, no, it was
Yeah.
just that something that had been raised at a
Yeah.
previous meeting.
Well, but I guess it's an issue, but it also like resolves probably some issues because it would resolve like sorting through multiple questions at the last minute and things like
Yeah.
that too. So maybe we could do that, and if time allowed, allow for additional questions from the people on site.
Yeah, whatever, what do you guys?
I don't know. I'm kind of going towards your threshold. The more parts you add to something, the greater the value of it, or the greater it's going to break. Does that make sense to you guys? Because in my head, it's perfect.
Well, Luann, who were you thinking that these questions would be sent to? Some.
I didn't have an opinion on it. I was just reminding of discussion that we had in a previous meeting, that we had said we would have people. But, of course, if we're going to do it, go the virtual, the hybrid type, where we have people here and then have it live streamed, then that's different than what we had originally planned. All I was doing was raising what we had talked about in the previous meeting.
Well, it makes sense to me to do if you had an email that would work, because then you can sort through those early. If they're all sent on the night of the forum, somebody's going to be reading that darn computer and all of those questions, assuming there are a lot of questions, and culling them and then running them over to the moderator. If that sounds more cumbersome than if they were to write them, the people that would be here, writing them down, you can collect them at the end of the row and read through them pretty quick. But if you get 100 emails that night, getting through those seems trickier than if you would have gotten those ahead of time.
But isn't Leanne talking about getting them ahead of time?
Yes.
So if
I
you-
mean, that's the discussion that we had in the meeting,
So,
that we would publish an email address.
so if you did have them ahead of time, all you would need to do then is copy and paste the questions into a larger document, and you would have everything organized, correct?
Yes, just someone to have to be responsible for it. Because typically you have the reviewers in the hall, and they look at the questions to make sure that they may merge duplicates, that they're understandable, and that they're appropriate.
Well, we're still gonna have to have the
Yeah.
questions as people come in. But the idea that if we could do it beforehand.
I mean, we could put a deadline on when the questions could be submitted. That wouldn't be that much of an issue. We can say, at 24 hours in advance or whatever.
But that just puts another level of stuff. I mean, just another indicator of a place where we can.
Yeah, I'm open to doing it either way. It's just, I wanted to remind.
Can we use your email?
Ooh.
That was a direct question.
Katie, would there be something we could set up on another source that would be more neutral? I could set up an additional email, but my experience in the past is it doesn't necessarily work well.
Yeah, I can set up an alias for Karen, so just like a forum questions at suncitywest.com that'll auto forward to Karen, and then Karen can send those to you.
That would work for me.
Okay.
I think that gives the community good time to think about them, write them down, get them out, and then it avoids some confusion the night of reading a bunch of emails that may come. There may be few, we don't know. There may be very few.
So is this just for the night forum or is this for the day forum too?
This is strictly the first forum.
Yeah, night forum, I think.
All right.
Is
and
that
then-
the consensus of the committee then? Do I have consensus on this?
Okay?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and that one is not live
Wait, it
streamed.
just said the night forum. The night forum, the candidate forum is 9 AM to 11 AM. Which one are we talking about?
March 2, the forum that's at the lecture hall. March 2.
March 2. So that would be the morning session.
Morning forum here in the lecture
Yep.
hall on March 2.
And I think that's the one we were all talking about, and not
Yes.
doing it at the second one.
The
Correct.
meet and greet.
Right,
Yes, the meet
not-
and greet is where they just talk to the candidate.
Yep, okay.
Okay, we're set with that then? Okay,
So do you have like the deadlines, or Karen, are you gonna get me some press for this on when the deadlines are, or what the cutoffs are, et cetera?
Yes, and I just want to be sure that the committee now agrees. We really should talk about this just a little bit so we're all in agreement, right, about the procedure here. Because we're going to have to get, if we've just agreed that we want to do this, we have to get some deadlines down. We have to get some PR in place, right? All these little kind of details. So whether you want to do that right now in your current committee setting, or you want to assign a person on the committee to deal with me to get this through to Katie?
yeah,
I need to know.
we're gonna have Merle deal with you.
Okay, so Merle and I will work on it.
Great,
And we'll
I
do
love
this-
dealing with him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I'm gonna work with Merle. And again, because we're looking at March 2, and here we are going right into February pretty quickly. So we want to get this out pretty quick.
Well, this just allows another method. I realize it's last minute, but I think if we still have the night of, they can submit their questions here.
Yes.
All we've done is given them another venue, and maybe you don't have to have a deadline. Maybe it's open-ended until
Well,
the
but
night.
the problem is, you know, I have other things that I have to be doing with you all, and then we have to set a deadline. Because otherwise, the questions are gonna be streaming through and I won't be there and I can't be
Sure.
here. You realize, right?
so
So-
Katie, you have to go with the, paper on February 1st, right?
Well, so you're not gonna make that deadline because the event is March 2nd. Your deadline's gonna be before that, and the February rec news is already depressed, so you will be looking at the March rec news anyways. I mean, if anything, you're gonna get in there for a couple of days. I don't know that it's,
Well, we can publicize it on e-news though.
e-news for sure. We can
Yeah.
put it out in the newspaper, we can put it in the website, but I don't think you're gonna get it in the March rec news for a March 2nd event. I mean, we could, but I don't know if that's really worth it at that point, because I don't know what your deadline is. If your deadline for questions to Karen is February 28th, you're not putting it in the March rec news. Does that make sense?
And
So,
we're gonna-
so I would say we hit all our other media, all our digital media, and not worry about the rec news. One other thing I wanted to ask was, so we are not talking about the nighttime one, because that is not being filmed. It's not being live streamed. We're talking about the daytime one. That is being live streamed to YouTube. Now, YouTube has an option for people to submit questions live right there while it's happening. Are you taking live questions? We can turn off that chat. Otherwise, they will add chat to that. You can ignore it. Otherwise, you have to have someone there moderating it if you want to take those questions. I don't know that you want to try to take and moderate those questions live during a forum, if any of you are familiar with that.
Personally, I would not like to have live chat because then people can put anything they want as a question, and then somebody says, well, why didn't you ask that question? I think it can cause issues if we have questions coming in during the forum. Personally, I would rather
I
not
agree.
have them.
I agree with you, Luann.
Okay, so we will turn that off for that. So all the questions will be coming in ahead of time via this email or your own process that you've already got. Okay,
And then also during the forum, if we have people here,
okay,
they can be submitting, and I think we also have a few questions.
okay.
And again, Luann, just to clarify, that means the people who are here in person will be able to submit questions only. Nobody who is watching via YouTube.
And we can certainly explain the fact that it would be very difficult to moderate during the forum. And they do have the opportunity to submit the questions in advance.
Okay? Are we set with that, everybody? Everybody agree? Okay,
One quick question. Katie, does it have to be forwarded to Karen, or could you forward, since it will be specific for questions, the email address will be specifically for questions for the forum, could it be forwarded directly to Merle so that Kate, we don't have another level in there?
I can check. I don't know if I can forward, an alias I can't make for outside the organization. I could create an email address internally and forward that. I don't know if I have to pay for a license on that, but let me do a little more digging to see how I can set that up. An alias I know I can set up, but that has to be on an internal organization email. Let me see what I could do with the forwarding, though.
Yeah, just so Karen wouldn't have to.
Yeah. Okay, let me see what I can do on that.
okay.
May I just ask a question, Marshall? At the forum, which again, we're talking about the daytime forum here in the lecture hall, so we understand that there have to be people who collect questions. We understand there's a moderator and a helper. There's also what's called a timer who flags the candidates at intervals starting with 2 minutes, a minute and a half, 30 seconds, and done. So that's another role for the
Yeah,
committee.
okay.
I just want to be
Yeah,
sure
we
it's
can
not
determine that,
overlooked.
yeah.
Will there be the red screen at the same time or no?
Pardon?
Will there be the red screen at the same time that counts or no?
The what?
The red screen, I'm afraid I don't know.
The screen that, like at the general meetings, the screen that
Oh, the
does
2
2
minute
minutes?
countdown.
Yes.
The 2 minute countdown, no, because this is on YouTube and it's a timer, the way it's been done. And again, it's up to you all. The person sits in the middle of the front row or has a chair there. And I have sheets that the person watches the clock and puts up the sheets so the candidates understand as their time winds down. It isn't the 2 minute countdown clock from our meetings. Now, is that a possibility?
Well, it's, so where's the candidate standing?
There are going to be 5 candidates at tables here on the stage.
Yeah, so the timer would be behind him, which wouldn't make sense, and it would look bad on YouTube. But you could have, if you have a timer from your committee sitting in the front row, we could give you an iPad with a timer, so there's a visual facing the candidate, if that's something you wanted.
Right. Or they use their phones. That's what we've done in the past. They use the countdown. On their
But the candidate can't see a phone.
No, they see the cards that are held up. The timer holds up minute 30 seconds. That's how it's been done in the past.
Okay.
So the candidates understand the countdown.
Okay. Okay. Any questions?
So you said 4 positions. Moderator,
A moderator's
person to collect
assistant.
and merge the questions, and a
There's
timer,
usually a greeter on that side and this side, if not 2 of them.
2 greeters.
Plus, one of those greeters in a way stands at the doorways and hands out the index cards and
3
pencils.
greeters.
Or 4, because we have 2 doors, 2 sides. And then we have, so we have a small committee. So that's why I want to be sure all these roles are.
Yeah, it sounds
Wait.
easy, but once we're done greeting,
Mhm.
the 2 greeters are idle.
Could be timer.
Someone will come in time, and the moderator, and that's it, right?
That's correct. However, and one of the greeters should probably pretty much remain active because people will potentially continue to send questions to the side.
Yeah,
during the forum.
so 2 greeters outside, 2 people in here to handle questions. Those 2 people in here to handle questions can stay there permanently all meeting. The 2 greeters out front are no longer needed. 1 can become a timer, so we've got a maximum of 4 plus our moderator.
And the moderator's assistant, there's generally somebody working with the moderator. Luann can probably talk about it more.
I actually have the procedure written out and I can give it to the team that's gonna be, and then you can adjust it as you want, because I think we had it like 2 greeters, 2 rovers, 2 reviewers, a timer, a moderator, and some can double up, but I can give this to the team that's gonna be working on it, and then they can change it as they see fit.
And you guys can work that out, and we'll just do it, you know. Okay? Okay,
My only other comment is gonna be that if we space here, we're not gonna have as many people here. We won't have as many questions coming in. So if we fit 30 people safely, I know those 30 people can contribute 5 questions each, but it's less to worry about.
and I suppose the administration will determine whether we should sit side by side or not, right, according to state guidelines? Or do we decide that?
Side by side.
We aren't gonna be sitting up here, candidates are.
No, I'm talking about out there. Are we
Who
gonna have a
determines
full
it?
house, or are we gonna go every other seat, or how's that gonna work?
I think we gotta go minimum spacing.
Yeah, but I say, is that our decision? Or is that
Yes, so
the
as
rec-
of right now, the rec centers is not limiting capacity, and there are no state guidelines limiting capacity. If you, as the election committee, wanted to make that decision, you could, but there's nothing at the rec centers that is limiting capacity. And like I said, I think most people are making the decisions for themselves that make sense, so if you feel the need, you could. I think most people are gonna make their own decisions, and if it's spiking at that time, they're gonna stay at home and watch this thing on computer anyway.
So the question like this week, is the play a full house? It is?
Yeah, we're not limiting capacity on anything right now.
Okay, all right. Hmm? Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Will the committee make a decision on that today or later?
No, we'll sit on it a month.
Thank you.
Yeah, that said, I will say the rec centers is very aware of the heightened numbers. Staff does have a mask mandate in place. The rec centers advises people to mask up, to get vaccinated, to socially distance. We're not mandating it, but we definitely advise it, and we have had a handful of clubs that have chosen to close themselves down due to heightened numbers. They're temporary closures, but they've seen a spike and they are closing, so we're not making light of it in saying that we're not limiting capacity. There's definitely a lot going on out there in that community. It's just not something that we're mandating at this time.
Can we mandate masks for the forum?
I would say no.
But we can certainly,
We can
Heavily
provide them.
suggest it.
Yes, you can heavily suggest it, and we can certainly provide them at the door.
Okay,
I suspect most people are going to watch this from home, though. That they're enjoying the convenience of board meetings at home, and in the past, the forum was heavily watched from home. And like I said, go on YouTube and check it out from last year. You'll see the numbers. I think the viewership numbers are available for you guys to see as well. Yeah, so you can see how many views that thing got from last year. It was very well viewed.
questions for the audience? Anybody have questions, George? Okay.
Hey, Marshall, I just want to say, you guys have done a great job with this. Absolutely, thank you so much.
Yeah, one thing we didn't discuss, I just wanted to touch on is homebound voting. So we didn't talk about that, but we do have homebound voting available. It is mentioned in the PR and on the schedule. It's usually done through telephone voting. So if people do not have a computer or won't have access to a computer and they can't physically get down to the Data Resource Center, they can call Karen, and Karen can work with the vendor and myself and That usually involves the telephone. They can call the vendor, and the vendor will call them back. They have 24 hours usually callback time. The vendor will call them back, and they will take their vote over the phone. It's a live person that works with the vendor. They take their vote over the phone. We have had visually impaired people take advantage of this, or someone that's just not computer savvy. So just pointing that out, it is in all the PR as well. So I don't know if Karen has any other feedback on that. But that does have an early deadline, the same registration deadline as the online voting.
Let's close the meeting, and we'll go into closed session and discuss the questions on the forum.
So the screen is off, right?